Okay, we're live, so I'll call the meeting to order. I'll look to my clerk for roll call. Jonathan?
It's pretty good.
Thank you, Warden. Just moving through the members here. We have all members of council in attendance with a few exceptions. If I mention that you're not here and you are here, please let me know. Councillor Bell, I do not see. Councillor Laux is absent. Councillor Leduc is absent. Councillor Norcross is absent. Councillor Prost is absent. Councillor Sandu is absent. And Councillor Snell is absent. You have your quorum. Thank you, Warden.
Thank you. Approval of the agenda. Normally I'd get Councillor Dolan. I don't think you have one in front of you there. So I've got the agenda for June 17th, 2025 meeting, special meeting of the County Council Transit Planning Workshop be approved. Moved by Councillor Dolan, second by the Deputy Warden. All in questions about the agenda? Not seeing any. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Do I have a disclosure of hearing interest by any member of council? Not seeing any. If you find yourself, I can't imagine, but if you find yourself in that situation later, please declare it at that time. So with this, I will introduce General Manager Elliott and our planning engineer, Nathan Westenthorpe. If you gentlemen want to take the show away. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, Council, and thank you all for joining us. Today's session marks an essential milestone in the evolving transportation strategy that the county has been on a journey towards. If I think back to 2007, that was the first transportation master plan that the county council endorsed, and that was when the seeds were planted for a county transit system. Fast forward to 2014, that is when the transportation master plan laid the groundwork and said we should get into the transit business. And now you have many years of successful Lynx transit, and thank you Dennis and Shaw. They're doing a great job running our transit system right now, and they're joining us. And then fast forward again to 2024 with the 2024 transportation master plan. And again, what we heard through that process was we think that we could do a little bit more in terms of transit. So today we're formally launching a two-phase transit review in partnership with Dillon Consulting. I'm joined by Dennis and Kristen from Dillon Consulting. They're our project leads. And this project is designed to evaluate how we deliver service around the county today and tomorrow, and to identify the necessary challenges to ensure we meet the needs of tomorrow. To be clear, today is not about who does what. It's about who needs what. What do our future businesses and residents need? Are we good? Thank you. This is a strategic process to build a high-performing, connected, and sustainable regional transit system. We're here to ask questions, challenge assumptions, and explore bold solutions. The path before us has two phases. The first phase runs from now through November, and it looks at what we have today. How do things operate today? We have a number of transit systems running. We have regional transit, we have local transit, we have Metrolinx, we have GO, we have Ontario Northland, we have VIA. How can we integrate them better? And we'll take a thorough look at existing services, identifying gaps, overlaps, opportunities for integration. We'll also be developing a county-wide transit vision that reflects the realities of our geography, our communities, our economy, and our growth trajectory. We'll be looking at developing a service model that is responsive, scalable, and financially sustainable. We'll be exploring how we align technology, fare structures, and scheduling. We'll be looking to ensure rural and urban areas receive tailored solutions that are both equitable and effective. We'll be addressing long-standing challenges like limited service on weekends, geographic isolation, and accessibility for specialized needs. And our consultant will come before County Council later this fall with recommended service models. Assuming council moves forward with the recommended service model, that's when we head into the second phase. We will shift our focus to how we do that. It'll focus on governance and financial models. We'll have to ask, what's the current structure that's the right one to carry forward the vision that phase one articulates? Are we positioned to act regionally, to make timely decisions and deliver transit with accountability and transparency? If not, what's the right model that should do that? One key to success for this project is engagement. Engagement by all the local municipalities, by local councillors, by yourselves, by local staff, by economic drivers, by schools, by hospitals. Engagement is key because we serve everybody and we serve all the taxpayers. Local municipalities bring operational experience, local knowledge, and political realities. We will need to build this plan properly and successfully. Your engagement today and throughout is critical, and so thank you for today. Transit drives access to employment, education, healthcare, and housing. It supports growth and it creates opportunity. It reduces isolation and it reflects the kind of county we want to be: connected, inclusive, and forward-thinking. This review provides us with an opportunity to do that. It provides an opportunity to build a stronger Simcoe County, to create something that's lasting and transformative, not just for the next few years, but for the next generation. And it requires that we work together with clarity, urgency, and a shared commitment to excellence, achieving the vision that this workshop will help to create. So today, we're asking for your honest input. We're asking for strong voices. We're asking for you to ask good questions. We've got the experts here to answer them. And finally, your willingness to challenge what we do today for a better tomorrow. So we look forward to building the transit system in Simcoe County for the future, starting today. Thank you. I'll hand it over to Dennis as he has a presentation for council, and then that'll be followed by a question and answer period. Facilitated by Kristen. And just from a logistical purpose, because we have a hybrid solution or a hybrid meeting today, there will be a period at the end for questions. So if you could hold all of your questions to the end, you may actually find some of the questions answered during the life of the presentation. Dennis, thank you very much.
And we're going to do it. Yeah, oh, perfect. Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for that introduction, Nathan. My name is Dennis Carr. I'm a partner at Dillon Consulting and the project manager for this assignment. So I'm here today to speak to you a little bit about transit in the county, go over a little bit about what the purpose of our study is and what we're looking to accomplish, and provide a little bit of information about transit itself. So transit, how it operates, how it's different in a rural versus urban context, inter-community versus local, really just to set the context for what we're going to be looking at and provide some sort of basics around how transit systems function. And I know everybody is at a different stage in terms of their transit knowledge. Some of you have local transit systems in place, some of you don't. And so this is meant to sort of set that stage and set that context. So my presentation today will be just shy of half hour. And Kristen, I've told if I'm yapping on a little bit too long, she's going to give me a little bit of a nudge to get me to speed up, because what we really want to do is make sure that we have a lot of time for this fulsome discussion, right? So that's when we'll have that discussion going forward. So Nathan already identified the purpose of our study and how it's split up into two phases. So I'm not going to get into that in any great level of detail. As Nathan mentioned, we're in phase 1A right now, and really this is about understanding what the transit vision is and what it's going to look like. What are the needs of county residents? And how do we deliver on that need? Then we get into, we understand what the need is, so what's the best way to deliver that on that need, right? And that's when we get into phase 1B. Is it the existing approach that we have now, or do we start to think about something else and different alternatives? So in terms of, I'm just gonna, in terms of the workshop purpose, again, provide insight on the role of transit in communities and how systems are operating and funded, identify your vision for transit, and request feedback on the most pressing mobility issues facing each of your communities. So in terms of why do we plan transit systems, it's done for a number of different reasons, and we sort of group them into 4 outcomes: equity, access, environment, economy, and efficiency or cost effectiveness. So when it comes to the benefits of transit from an equity perspective, it's improving access to communities for those with limited options. Looking at individuals who may have lower incomes, seniors who may not feel comfortable driving anymore, or who may have lost their license, students who don't have a license. And it provides that opportunity to attract and retain residents and support aging in place as well. Also looking at it from the perspective of providing more access to affordable housing. We have an affordable housing crisis right now. What is that potential opportunity of reducing a 3-car household to a 2-car or a 2-car to a 1-car household in terms of overall household savings and the ability to support living in the county? From an economic perspective, visitors and residents have more access to businesses, so it helps the local economy thrive. It helps attract employment to the county, helps keep employers happy because they have access to a broadened labor force as well. So there's many large employers, and not just the large employers, even the small businesses that require access to after-school jobs for people to have limited opportunity benefit from having a transit system in place. From an environmental perspective, if we can reduce the number of single-use vehicles on the roadway, and we can introduce more car sharing through transit, we can reduce your GHG emissions as well, and also limit the need to expand roadways. And then from the efficiency, congestion reduction, particularly on weekends and during the summer or busy tourist seasons, we can help limit the amount of congestion that occurs, making it a more attractive place to be. So Nathan outlined the history, so I won't get into this in any great detail. As he mentioned, we started off in 2014 with the Simcoe Transportation Master Plan that recommended the Simcoe Link service be in place. Now fast forward to 2024, and the recommendation is looking at how do we expand it, how do we improve it, what does the future of county-wide transit service look like? So when we're looking at this, one of the first things we're going to be looking at is what are the mobility gaps and challenges that are currently in place. In terms of intercommunity connections, we need to connect. We're going to be looking at how do we connect outside of your community to access work, education, health, and other needed services. So some communities, there are a number of communities that do have access to the Link service, but other communities that do not. As Nathan had mentioned, most of the communities that do have access, it occurs during the weekday with limited access on weekends as well, when we do feel that there still is a potential transit demand. So we're going to be looking at this. We're going to be looking at what are these right connections? Are there communities that aren't currently connected that should be connected? That forms part of what we'll be looking at. In terms of local, we do know that there's a number of local municipalities that have access to a local service. And even when we're thinking about it from an intercommunity perspective, if we introduce a route, what's the ability for a resident to get to that route, right? There's a certain form and function in how transit systems operate, intercommunity routes. They're meant to be fast, direct from community to community with limited stops, right? Because that's how you get those long distance travel. They don't typically serve that similar local function. So then we have to start considering what is that potential to get people to that stop? Is there a desire to? And then in the locals, we have certain communities that don't have local certain communities with Sunday service, but many that don't have or that don't have that have limited evening service. So we're looking for those gaps. And then really what a lot of the crux of what we're going to be doing is how do we connect between services as well? What potential improvements can we make? Now, Simcoe Links has done a lot to improve that integration and coordination, but we're going to be asking questions about full fare integration between systems, better optimizing schedules to minimize wait times, utilizing the same technology for customer-facing applications, ensuring that there's equity of access across the county, ensuring accessibility features are consistent between services, and increasing ease of planning and paying for your services as well. So these are just some potential things that we're going to be looking at. And of course, the reality check is, when we look at, how we plan these services, there's certainly a rural challenge that we're going to be facing. I'm not going to lie to you, the cost of providing services in some of the more rural areas, or even some of the intercommunity service that go through larger or rural areas, is higher than if you're providing in an urban area. And that's just because we don't have that density of population around. And so we'll see a higher cost per hour or a higher cost per capita. But the one thing we found is even though we have that higher cost, that mobility need is much greater. When we're dealing in a more rural setting, while many people do have access to an automobile, those that don't have access to an automobile have very limited travel options. So those who need it, really need it. There's limited opportunities for them to get around, live in the county, age in place, access employment opportunities. So how do we make the case for transit? The first thing we want to look at is establishing your mobility goals and understanding your passenger needs. What are the mobility objectives in your community? What does your official plan say that you're looking to achieve? Who are your target passengers? So just thinking about this when we get into that question and answer period. What kind of trips are you hoping to accommodate? What days a week and hours of service are needed to accommodate those trips? So, we took a look at a number of the official plans that are in place, both the county and local official plans, and we certainly saw that there are some common themes, right? And we think about transit's role is to achieve a broader municipal purpose, right? So we saw a lot of official plans have economic development as a core theme, right? So transit's role is how do I get employees access to those economic opportunities, right? Whether I'm shopping, services, or I'm an employee, how do I get that access? Managing growth, sustainable development was a common theme. Creating complete communities, socially and physically accessible community, age-friendly planning. These are some themes that we sort of heard within the official plan. And the question back is, what's transit's role in achieving these broader municipal needs? More specific themes regarding transportation that were identified in many of your official plans had to do with being more multimodal, focusing on accessibility and equity, connectivity, ensuring that there's those connections that are made, focusing on growth, and municipalities are linking transit planning to accommodate current and future population and employment growth. So as we're growing as municipalities, the mobility needs increase. And of course, sustainability, both environmental and financially sustainable. And as well, the transportation master plan of the Simcoe County identified that transit as a viable choice for everyday travel. So that clear, consistent theme, and the key word is viable, right? I have that option to take transit. It's something that I can do to help me accommodate growth, support community connectivity and accessibility, support our sustainability goals, and support economic development. And that means having a system that's reliable, well-connected, and frequent. And of course, it supports growth. The county's population is forecasted to grow from about 360,000 to about 555,000 by 2051. That's a significant amount of growth. And again, how do I accommodate the mobility needs of that future population? Likewise, jobs are looking to grow from about 200,000 from about 90,000 to about 200,000 in 2051. And we'll see growth being directed in many of the larger settlement areas. And again, is this something where we focus some of the transit services on, or maybe it's just certain types of transit services? And a desire to increase the transit mode share or reduce single occupant vehicle travel. So how do we plan this service once we understand the need? There's lots of different service options available to you. And the one thing that I want to stress, and actually two things, is one, there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution for transit. Okay, so it's a lot harder to change the land use in which transit operates in, which sort of dictates how transit best functions. So there are various different service models in place that can best respond to different types of geographies, different types of demographics as well. And the other thing too is, the solution sometimes isn't as easy as diverting an existing fixed route that's already in place. If I have a well-established fixed route and I want to divert it to pick up additional residents, that's something that we explore, but it can have implications as well. It can increase the overall travel time for the people that are already on the vehicle, and now I've just increased their travel time and made the service less attractive. Can result in potentially missed connections if I'm increasing, again, the travel time and there's a specific schedule, or it can reduce the frequency if we're not adding service with that expansion. So just different things that we look at when we plan our service. 4 different types of transit services that we'll look at. We'll look at fixed route transit, and we typically see these in urban areas. And for long distance commutes, right? So this is where a vehicle operates on the same path, on a fixed route, on a fixed schedule, with predefined stops, and passengers are required to walk or roll to that bus stop. So we've seen these in many areas in the county as well, including Simcoe Links and Mid-Penn Transit, or in Midland Penetanguishene. On-demand transit as well is something that we'll be exploring. This is a shared ride service that doesn't operate on a fixed route or schedule. To utilize this service, a passenger either uses their mobile phone or can call in and request a ride. And once that ride is requested, an optimization system in the back will identify what's the most optimal route and schedule to pick that passenger up and take them to their destination, while picking other passengers up and dropping them off along the way. So it's still a shared ride experience, but it doesn't necessarily have to follow that same route. So these are quite effective in some of the low demand areas or periods of the day where it's lower demand, and sometimes more in rural areas as well, where there's not an established origin destination pattern. We'll look at specialized transit and specialized transit integration. So how do we accommodate the needs of persons with disabilities who cannot walk or roll to a fixed route bus, or cannot utilize that fixed route bus? So ensuring that there's accessibility features in place to accommodate the various needs. And sometimes this can be integrated with both the on-demand system and the fixed route system. And we'll look at taxi or ride-sharing integration as well. This is a very sort of innovative approach that was piloted and is currently in place in Innisfil. And again, it's partnering with a local taxi provider or a ride-sharing app to utilize the vehicles that they currently have in place, and try to optimize that service as well. So there's sort of pros and cons to each of these service models, and its suitability for various different environments, and that's something that we'll look at. The one thing to note is that when we introduce a transit system, there's both needs and desires. So for a service to be successful, there's certain things it has to have. It has to have access to a service. So I have to be able to walk or roll to it, or that vehicle pick me up to my house. I need that either sidewalk infrastructure or the ability to get to the stop. I need availability. So when do you provide the service? So depending on my need, if I'm using it for work and my work is 9 to 5, I need the transit system to be available at that time of day or 5 days a week. Accessibility for all, for persons with disabilities, for active transit infrastructure, et cetera. Simplicity, the ability to easily navigate the service, understand how to plan my trip. You know, it can't be very confusing, or even transfer between a local and an intercommunity service or a GO service. You know, is that easy to do? Has to be affordable. All right, so if I'm using it 5 days a week to go to work, I need to consider that as part of my overall expense. Safe and effective. And then there's also desire. So needs allow people to use the system. Desires is what allow people to change modes and think of transit as an alternative. And here we look into convenience. You know, is it fast, direct, frequent, has a good level of customer service that are friendly and helpful. There's a culture around transit that's seen as positive, and there's equity that's sort of in place that allows all residents to access some level of service. And of course, the service level must match demand. So when you look at daytime, you know, if our focus is on providing transit for economic development and you have a lot of shift work, right? That's not going to be effective if you're only operating service during the day, right? Then we have to look at how do I extend that service into the evenings or on weekends if that is my ultimate goal. So understanding what your goal is helps us tailor that service to make sure it's useful. So in terms of costs and funding, you know, the typical thing, you know, transit, I'm sure everybody knows this, transit will not pay for itself. There is an investment in transit, and I always look at it as, you know, it's the same as investing in libraries. It's the same as investing in roads, in sports plexes, right? There's a decision that's made to invest in these facilities or services for members of our community. And again, you're balancing your budgets and trying to figure out what you're prioritizing. So we always like to think about transit as that investment in how people access the libraries, sport plexus, employment opportunities, education opportunities that you have in place. And what's that overall need? So I always look at that as an investment. And then just another quick fact, you know, small vehicles don't always save money. So when you look at the overall operating cost of what a transit system takes to operate, the biggest cost is this driver, all right? That's largely that we're paying a driver's salary. And that we pay the driver the same salary, whether we're operating a 40-foot bus or we're driving a small cutaway vehicle. It's always that same salary. And sometimes there are costs that are in place to use smaller vehicles or to switch from a large to a small vehicle in terms of that vehicle having to go back to the garage and switching out to a larger vehicle during the peak periods. So what we always do is we try to plan for what the peak period demand is and make sure we have a vehicle size that's available. And that's no different than when we're planning roads, right? We plan roads, the width of roads for that peak demand. And at midnight, obviously, that demand is not being used as much as it is during the rush hour period. So transit vehicles are the same. Typical costs and funding, they sort of vary based on the level of service that's in place, but something that we're going to look at as we go through this. You know, total operating expenses, total revenue, net operating costs for, and these are the systems that are currently placed within the county, along with specialized. But typically what we'll see is, in terms of overall cost recovery, what we're recovering from the passenger fare is typically anywhere between 6 and 30% of the operating cost, right? And again, that's reflective on the context in which transit operates. In a much more rural, long distance, you know, we're typically seeing lower cost recovery. If it's a bit more dense, you might see slightly higher, but we're typically passenger fares cover a small portion of overall operating cost. We have other funding opportunities available through the Rural Transit Solutions Fund. If there's a desire for expansion, there may be the ability to purchase vehicles through that fund. Development charges, so as you grow, the ability to recover growth-related capital and infrastructure through development charges, and the Ontario Transit Investment Fund is sort of that newest funding source out there that may potentially have some operating costs allocated to it. And of course, there's provincial gas tax. So provincial gas tax is dedicated only for transit. You can't be used for anything else. So if we're not accessing all of that provincial gas tax, then that money is going somewhere else, right? So we need to figure out how to maximize that. And of course, we have our capital cost, vehicles, facilities, stop stations, technology. These are all things that go into operating system. These can sometimes be passed on to a contractor depending on how it goes, but if there's a decision to own, there may be some funding sources available to access these capital needs to operate a service. And then finally, the last piece I wanted to talk about was integration and governance. And so as we move forward, that was a little bit about how transit systems look, why we plan them, what their benefits are, the different service models that we'll be looking at, typical costs, and the sort of financing things. So once we understand what your vision is, what the community's vision is through that engagement process, and develop a service plan, we might start then looking at what's the most effective way to achieve that vision, right? And we'll be looking at things from a customer experience perspective, right? So what's my ease of paying my fare if I'm transferring between local to intercommunity, right? Is it easy? Is it difficult? Do I need two cards? What's the transfer going to look like? How do I plan my trip? Again, is that easy to do? Is it easy to navigate? If I have a question about a service, am I calling two different customer support lines or am I calling one, right? We'll be looking at costs. So are there cost efficiencies in terms of improved integration, right? Is there cost efficiency if we're moving to an on-demand software to engage one on-demand technology provider instead of several? A couple for local and a couple and one for county-wide. Long-term growth, right? What is the best way to accommodate long-term growth? So if you have bold long-term growth visions that says, I want to reduce the amount of traffic, I want to spur economic development, is the existing structure in place the best way to accommodate achieving long-term growth objectives, or are there other options that we'll be looking at? And again, and other municipal goals, sustainability, economic development, what's the best way to achieve those? Is it the existing structure or others? So this is just an example of what we'd be looking at if we move to stage 1B after we present in November. What's the most effective model? Is it staying the way we are? So we've developed a plan. We have local systems in place that operate. We have the county-wide system. That's the most effective way to deliver the service. Or we could look at on the other end of the spectrum, more of a county-wide model similar to York Region or Durham or Waterloo, where it's fully integrated, the responsibility of the upper tier, or anything in between, which involves some level of cooperation, shared service agreement models, et cetera. So we'll be looking at that sort of whole spectrum to see what's the most effective way to operate the service. But that's a discussion for later. Today's discussion is about what does that vision look like. So with that, I think I've been within the 30 minutes, which is good. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Kristen.
Yeah, we're ahead of schedule. Good news. More time for discussion. So now we are going to have some time for questions and answers. First of all, so as Dennis and Nathan said, my name's Kristen Lillyman. I will be the facilitator today, so just trying to keep the conversation moving, make sure everyone gets a chance to be heard. It will be difficult. We have a lot of questions, so I ask that you be succinct in your comments so we can get to as many people as possible and get to all the questions. But for now, we have 10, 15 minutes for any questions that you may have, any questions of clarification about the presentation that you just heard. We do have a hand online. Councillor Anderson, I thought was first there? Or no, did I see that wrong?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Councillor Anderson, go ahead.
So I have a couple of comments and questions, and if you're okay with me just running through them. First of all, just a comment when looking at growth projections, and I come from a rural municipality, So the concern is that sometimes we're not looking at this holistically, where growth comes into an area and we're not ready for transit. And so I'm just looking to see if there's a way of planning better so that when growth does happen, there are plans already in place to facilitate transit. So that's just a comment that I'd like to provide. The question I have within the framework of the presentation, it noted that 6 to 30% of ridership revenue in the transit recovery. I'm just wondering, is that standard across the board for transit systems in Ontario or in Canada? Like, is that the average?
Dennis, yeah, you can go ahead.
Yeah. Through the chair, thank you for that question. It is pretty typical in that type of environment. You know, as you get into very urban systems like the city of Toronto, you might get a cost recovery of about 65% or something like that, because that's where you have that density. But in the geographic context and size of your population, that is pretty standard, yes.
And then the second question through the chair, just we did receive the communication there on the 11th for, you know, the public open houses coming in. Could I just ask what further media and planning your firm will be doing to facilitate getting the public engaged?
Yeah, I can speak to that and then maybe ask Nathan to chime in if there's anything else I miss. But there was a press release and a website update along with social media and radio advertisements. And then there's an online survey online right now until July 4th. And that already has over 300 responses as of yesterday. And then we have 3 open houses, one tomorrow night, and then Wednesday night, and we'll get into this at the end of the presentation as well, and one the following week as well. Is there anything else I missed, Nathan? Yes, I missed.
Thank you, Kristen and Councillor Anderson, and actually all of council. So there's multiple different ways. So for the public, Kristen's right. There's the public survey that we've been doing a lot of work through our corporate communications team, getting the word out. Please do attend those in-person open houses. There's also, after June 25th, there will be a virtual open house as well, where people can just go through the same content that they would have seen at the in-person open houses, but at their own leisure from the convenience of their own computer. There's also an email for this project specifically. It's transitreview@simcoe.ca if there's any specific questions that they can't find the answer to on the website. And there's also a variety of different opportunities for local municipalities to be able to engage. We're also engaging with stakeholder meetings, with the business community, with schools, with hospitals, and a wide variety of other agencies and ministries and Indigenous partners as well.
Okay, great. Appreciate the update.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Anderson. Okay, Chair Dolan.
Thank you very much. Is there or has there been a reach out to either the cities of Orillia or Barrie to see if they're interested in being part of this process? I think I probably already know the answer for at least one of those municipalities, but I thought I would ask the question, being that they're kind of the holes in the donut.
You want to answer that?
Through the chair, we are reaching out as part of our stakeholder engagement to the transit operators in both Orillia and Barrie, and I'm not sure if there's anything else.
So the project will engage the cities of Barrie and Orillia through a variety of those conduits of meetings. We understand that people cross those borders, and the riders don't see really a difference between municipal borders. So that engagement to further integration with our systems is right, but whether or not there'll be a part of a county-wide system, if that's where we end up going, is probably a question for later in the project once we figure out where people need to go.
Okay, thank you. I'll go to online. I do see Councillor Van Staveren.
Thank you.
Next.
Thank you. Interested in that we were in your review of the different types of transit, and particular the on-demand transit. Two parts to that question. One is it being run by an individual, run by a computer, or run by AI? And secondly, have we had any experience with the on-demand within the link system?
Hey, Dennis, do you want to take that about the first question about on-demand?
Yeah, I'll take on the first question about on demand, and maybe I'll turn it over to Dennis Child about his experience and the link system. So the on-demand system operates sort of there's an algorithm in sort of the back end that helps optimize where vehicles go. This type of service has been in place since probably 2017, 2016, and a lot of Ontario and Canadian and municipalities outside of Canada are adopting this model in various different contexts. So it's still driven by a driver to take you where you need to go. It's just the system in the back end optimizes where the vehicle should go to pick up and drop off passengers.
Thank you very much for the question. So we are currently using an on-demand service for specialized transit. What happens is our customers will call into customer service. The ride is booked into the system. That when the customer calls in, the ride is confirmed, and then through the Blaze system, then the ride is actually dispatched. So we're already using this technology. It's a proven technology. When we got the technology about 3 or 4 years ago, it was always intended to be an on-demand service, so that if we had decided to expand, we could use it to the on-demand services in the rural areas of the communities.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you for the question. I'll go to Councillor McClellan next.
Thank you so much. Mine is more of a comment. So I am talking about Route 5 in New Tecumseh. So right now, only 2/3 of our municipality has connection with links. So I just wanted to comment that looking through this through an economic development lens, we have a lot of auto industry in Tottenham and Alliston, and I've heard many stories about young ones getting into the workforce, doing co-ops and apprenticeships that can't come here because they don't have a car, they don't drive, or they don't have transit. So I'm just speaking up for Tottenham. It's a population of 10,000 people, so we would absolutely love a connection in Tottenham, and I think that would really go a long way in helping our auto industry as well connect with new young people for their workforce. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I'll go to Councillor Rawson next.
Thank you. There was a comment on the presentation that talked about Ontario gas tax and potential to increase allocation. When we partnered the town of Penetanguishene and town of Midland, my understanding was there was a greater chance of more gas tax reimbursement by us collaborating Midland and Penetanguishene together. So I'm just wondering if we look at a larger system that's county administrated, county run, does that increase the allocation potential for a regional transit as opposed to having, if we all had our own service? So that's my first question. My second one was about a comment that was made about diverting fixed route. And I guess my question is about current users of the system. So for example, if a member of my community want to go to Orillia, they would use the town of Penetanguishene Transit, which is run by Midland. Then they would have to get off and get on the Midland bus to then connect onto the Lynx bus, because the two Lynx buses don't connect to Midland that does the Orillia route. So I'm hopeful we see those gaps today and how we can get true connections within the Lynx system. And one more, if I can, which was a follow-up on Councillor Anderson, I believe. I think it's important we hear from the current users of the system. So I appreciate we're doing some town hall style meetings, but are we going to be doing QR codes or surveys in the existing bus network system now that users can actually participate in the survey and feedback? My questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll get Dennis to answer the first two at least.
Okay, through the chair, thank you for that question, or those questions. So in terms of the provincial gas tax, the formula is based on sort of funding formula that takes into account ridership and population. And through that, you're allocated sort of a gas tax whatever your gas tax allocation is. But what you're actually given is based on the amount that you're spending on the service as well. So if we increase the size, if we increase the amount of spend in it, then there's a potential to gain a larger portion of that gas tax revenue. In terms of your next question, yes, something that we'll be looking at is the convenience of transferring between services. So are there these challenges about connecting between local and intercommunity routes that we want to start looking at in terms of either the stop location, scheduling, or the frequency? Certainly both things we'll be looking at.
I'll just add to the question about the survey. We do want to hear from people who are currently using the system, but also those who aren't or aren't yet. So we do have a question in the survey if they're using transit currently, so we can see how many responses we'll get from the different types of users in the system. Anything else to add? And there's ads in the buses to specifically target those users. Okay, I'll go to one more online and then we have one in person as well. So I'll go to Councillor Walker next. And Councillor McDonald, I see your request there, so we'll get to you on the third. And then we probably have about 5 minutes left. So if we can all be a bit succinct in our questions. Councillor Walker.
Thanks very much. I just wanted to say how I thought Nathan's comments at the beginning of the meeting were really bang on with respect to transit, the importance, and what we hope to achieve. In Tay's case, we are appreciative to have 2 stops currently. We have one in Wabashine and the other in Victoria Harbour. But we have one large populated community of Port McNicoll, which has no stop, even though it's located between 2 stops, those being Midland and Victoria Harbour. And it seems that I can't quite figure out why that was not included. There's been petitions filed with the county. We receive a lot of calls from Port McNicoll residents wanting transit, and I'll make sure that they're aware of the survey and so on. And the demographics of Port are such that they would be residents who would use the system, again, because it's located close to Midland, where a lot of the people are employed, and also because we've recently established a large development called Cherry Blossom Village for persons with afflictions, with medical afflictions, and they employ 200 people. And the owner of Cherry Blossom Village, I believe, sent a letter to the county asking for consideration for Port McNicoll to be included. So really, just an appeal for you to take a look at Port McNicoll in your review. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. I'll go to Councillor Ted Walker in here.
I borrowed, it's Councillor Peter Lavoie. I borrowed Ted's chair, he's up there. We've all moved over to get a little cozier. One question that I think what could be answered now, and just 2 for the future. The one now is how far in advance would someone have to book for the on-demand service? And the one that I'm thinking about for the future is, what is our actual recovery on the systems that we are operating? And what would be a reasonable cutoff? Because I think we can all make a lot of desires and demands, but I think, as a group, we all need to understand what threshold we might be willing to permit from a financial perspective. So I think the latter 2 are for the future, and just a demand question, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Through the chair, just to answer your question on what's a reasonable booking window or time of it really all depends on the context, right? If it's a larger rural system and depends on how many vehicles that you have in place, people may book the day before. Typically, we try to aim for like an hour or 2 before. If it's in a more settlement area, then again, it's reaching around that hour before. Larger, maybe a little bit longer. So you have that ability to book anytime, but the recommended book time may be a little bit longer depending on the context.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor McDonald online, and then I think we have 2 more questions here. Oh, 4, 5. Okay, well, we will try to be as succinct as possible so we can get through everyone. Councillor McDonald?
Thank you very much for your presentation. I have one question and one comment. The one question I would ask is, have you been in talks with Base Borden? The only reason I ask is that when we had our own bus system, they actually were part of that. So they may be a good connect. And the other question is I think the on-demand would work well for ESSA because we have one stop, which we're appreciative of, but it is on the furthest away from any housing that you can get for ESSA. We have all of our houses, pardon me, going in town and on the 5th line, and it's out on Brentwood Road. And so it doesn't do the job that we would have hoped. And that's the question that you're going to get from all of our residents is why is it out there that we'd have to take an Uber or a taxi to get to the busing system? So again, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Councillor.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the question. Regarding Base Borden, we've contacted the colonel in charge and the regimental sergeant major, and we've had ongoing discussions about having the bus through there. We're going to continue having those discussions as we continue to move forward.
Okay, Councillor Ms. Gimmons?
Thank you. Through the chair. I want to understand better our plans around accessible transit. As I understand it right now, accessible transit only exists if you're within 1 kilometer of a stop. So how do we expand that reach? We know that we've got an aging population in the county. If I speak selfishly and tiny, we're beyond the median age for Simcoe County, and I'm thinking it's far cheaper to be able to keep people in their own homes than putting them in our residence. And sometimes transit is that need that's keeping them from their doctor's appointments, medical. How do we expand that reach and maybe look at partnering with other service organizations out there that already have the assets and the staff to be able to provide these services? And it might just be an easier solution to get to that precipice point where we start to gain interest in it to help start funding itself when we mobilize quickly, as opposed to trying to build it from scratch and thinking of ourselves as the only owners of that transit system. It might be a way to kind of build faster and get that service out there. Just
great. Thank you.
Thoughts.
Dennis.
Through the chair, just to answer your question, it's certainly something that we're going to be looking at, right? And one of the questions we want to hear from you today as we go through this facilitated session is, how important is that value of providing accessible transit everywhere? And sort of where does that rate with the other priorities that you may have? So right now, from an AODA perspective, the transit with that 1 kilometer on either side of a route, because the AODA says that we have to provide an accessible transit option when there is a conventional option. So right now, there is no transit option in many areas of the county. So we have a couple of choices. We can look at community care. There's volunteer transportation. There's other things that can provide that service. But if you get into providing service for all residents too, we have to make sure it's also AODA compliant, and it might be its own specialized transit service. It might be integrated with on-demand. There's lots of different options that we can explore. And that's what we'll be doing.
So as Dennis mentioned, we're going to have lots of opportunity to get into some of these details. I see 1 question online and 2 in person, and then we're going to go into the discussion. So Chair Measures.
All right, thank you very much for recognizing me. There's been a lot of good conversation here. I do want to ask about the survey work or just the whole transit review work. Have the staff considered looking at the abilities of our lower tier transit services? I want to give you some examples. We've already heard about Penetanguishene in Midland. They have a good cooperative system. I would point out that certainly Clearview and Wasaga Beach have a cooperative system right now. And I would also point out about accessibility that Collingwood, Wasaga Beach, and Clearview have a very good and very well used accessible service that we share together and manage that. So I'm interested to know if we're taking that into consideration, or is this survey work and review work only focusing on the county services. I do have a supplemental question, but is there, maybe Nathan can help me out with that?
Thank you for the question, Mayor Measures. And you're actually highlighting part of what we're looking at. What's already working well? Do we need to replace what's working well, or how do we integrate what's alongside what's already working well? Where do those enhancements, how can we help with enhancements? So it's not just looking at, there's no preconceived outcome out of this. It's looking at the transit system as it sits today by whoever provides it today and saying, all right, well, what about the transit system of the future, and what of today needs to carry forward, and what of tomorrow needs to be enhanced? So that's part of that. The scope is looking at what's already working well and how do we build on that.
Okay. And if I can, just a supplemental comment I want to add. Our municipality is looking at the aging of our bus fleet. As you know, buses put a lot of miles on and they need a lot of maintenance. So we were investigating purchasing a new bus, and we're saddened to discover that it's much like ordering a fire truck. It could take 22 months, 25 months to get a delivery of a vehicle that's going to be suitable. Fortunately, we were able to find a used bus. As it turns out, it came from the Toronto airport area, some hotel or something, had a low mile bus that we were able to acquire as our now spare. But I think, if we're making these plans right now, I think this is, first of all, an economic development action that needs to come forward to show that this is good investment in our communities to buy these buses. And second, we need to get it in the budget right now to order more buses, because it takes so long to get them. So whatever work we come up with to try to meet the needs of the public right now, we have to take into consideration that we're not going to be able to meet those needs unless we actually get the hardware and hire those amazing drivers who are terrific. So that's my commentary.
Thank you, Chair. I'll go to Councillor Gordon, and then we had one over here, Councillor Gordon, not Gordon. Councillor was.
Someone might be in my chair, who knows?
Yep.
Yeah, no worries. So as Mayor Rawson alluded to, we share a transit system and have for quite some time, and it works really well. And then we also enhance our traditional fixed route with a relationship that we have with Community Reach that does our accessible transit for us. And when we're heading into budget and we're planning on this, and we knew, and I've been speaking to council and the community, that this study at the county level, as we're kind of suggesting that maybe the county upload transit across the county. The question I'm being asked by my councilor is like, hey, how long in the future should we be planning to continue to carry our own transit system, and when can we expect the county to absorb that and deliver transit across the entire county, not only to the small urbans, but the rurals as well, beyond the links that's already in place now. So I guess from a clarity perspective, it might be helpful to people watching this online. Is the objective and the outcome of this to look at basically absorbing the existing transit delivery that's in the municipalities that already have it in Simcoe County and replacing it with the Links version 2.0? Or is it enhancing the Links service to plug into the existing transit in the municipalities? Because we're trying to make planning, to Councillor Measures' perspective, and budgetary decisions on our aging fleet and a manufacturer that no longer, it's gone insolvent for parts. Or is this something that's, 2 years away, 5 years away? Like, if there is a plan to absorb all of the municipal transit from the urban partners that are offering it already. I'm not really sure, as we head into our budget and we start doing our 5-year transit plan, should we look at presumably having this thing uploaded to the county anytime soon, or do we continue with business as usual, managing our transit system and seeing where it connects to the county links?
Thank you for your question. Nathan is here to respond.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Gordon. And I think uploading is certainly a consideration and as a possible outcome, but it's not the only outcome. If your question is about timing, we expect to have answers within the next year, and this project we expect to be wrapped up by mid next year. So I would say within the next 1.5 to 2 years, your staff and those who are asking those questions will have the clarity they need. But again, we're trying not to have any preconceived notions. Right now, it's about figuring out what the transit system looks like, and then the governance piece will be who's best to operate that. Hopefully that provides a little bit of clarity from a timing perspective.
Sorry for that. Okay, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, through the chair, I'm not sure if this is what you want to hear at this time, but in the rural area that I'm in, and I would assume in many of the other rural areas, the Lynx bus comes through and it's a large bus and it is never ever full. So I would think that if you're looking at your numbers of users, you may be able to reduce the size of that bus and utilize that bus for another new route later or another one. My other one is you need to do some marketing or do something to change the mindset of people who live in small villages and rural Ontario. Rural is a vehicular lifestyle. You go out and you get in your car and you go. But as people get older, they realize that they've lost that and then they don't know what to do. And I would probably tell you that I could stand on the street in the village of Coldwater and talk to people about the bus and they wouldn't have got a clue what I'm talking about. No offense. There are a few people who use it, but I think you need to get your information out to the townships and towns and cities' websites. We need to pump that information out there. Some type of a link to this survey would be really good and get hold of our communication person. Like, I don't even care if you want to put it on Facebook, but somehow or other, it's got to get out there because I see a few people using it and I go to Orillia and Midland constantly and the bus goes by, but I don't think they understand it, and I don't think there's information on the routes and what times they do, but we need to change the mindset. We have more people now moving up from the city. You know, our whole demographics are changing, and they probably would utilize it too, because if they're coming up here probably with one vehicle, and most people do change to one vehicle. And the other one I wondered is when this bus goes to Orillia, it goes to the university, right? The stop is the university. Like, no offense, that's inconvenient because they can't catch they'd have to stop and find another bus to get to a mall or a store. So we need to work with Orillia on working with them on stops. And I mean, Orillia came to our council and because they crossed the bridge to go to the mall, assumed that we should be paying for their bus, but like basically, no, it's your bus. Your people are the ones that are coming to the mall, it's not our issue. But if people could utilize and know all these things, it would make it more convenient. And I believe marketing is a big one, a push you're going to have to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So a couple comments in there about communications and marketing of the services, but also some comments around the service to the university and Lynx. Is there any further we'll just take that back? Okay. Okay, our final question. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. I just have a comment. I'm from Collingwood, which is a more urban area. And I just really wanted to support your thought that increasing transit for growth is critical. And in the more and I'm sure we're not the only urban area where the planning department is taking to heart the provincial direction to use less land and to instead go higher in our buildings. So we're doing that, but also we're implementing the parking standards of more urban areas, but without the transit in place. So if I can just give you an example, these buildings aren't up yet, but over the last year, we've approved several higher rise buildings, and the parking requirements are half a spot per unit. All right. So these, you know, and of course, I just feel transit, we are always trying to catch up. And I'll just say, I'm so glad you're on the case. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. And we're going to get into the discussion component. And we are going to report back on some of the survey results. Some of you may have filled out our survey in advance. So we are going to report back on some of the findings from that survey and then get into some follow-up questions. So go to the next slide. Oh, I can do it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So here's some of our initial responses to the survey and how council has rated the effectiveness of services. On the left there, you'll see the services related to the Simcoe links, and then on the right, local transit. So how effective are these in meeting the needs of the residents? And for both, what emerged was somewhat effective, and with a little bit on very and slightly, and then some, it was not applicable. So those were the initial results. And what the question we want to know from you is, what are the biggest mobility challenges facing your community today and in the future? I already see a hand up there, Chair Dolan.
Thank you. I just, first of all, had one question. If you could tell me on that survey, how many people actually responded to the survey?
11.
Thank you. And then I'll answer this question. So I think it's diversity. You go across Simcoe County and you've got really densely populated areas, and then you've got miles and miles of open ditches and gravel roads. So trying to serve with equity across all those areas is a challenge, and that's a mobility challenge for us. I think also, are you talking mobility like disability mobility? Or
it could include that, but it really is, yeah, how they move around their communities, get to and from different places.
Right. So I think the other issue is the mix of rural and urban. So you've got people who've lived here their whole lives, second or third generation. So they not only have 2 cars, they have a snowmobile and a boat and an ATV and everything else that goes along with it. And then you've got folks that move up here from the city and have 1 vehicle for family and say, where's your transit? So that is another issue. And then the other issue is, in a very large municipality, getting to that 5-minute walk probably is more like a 10-minute walk in a snowstorm, and then a half an hour wait for a bus. Where the on-demand transit is, not only do they come right to your door within minutes, but also, they help you carry your groceries into your house too. So a very good level of service.
Okay, thank you. So the diversity of the area and also the different expectations of population, some of those other barriers. I'll go to Chair Measures next, and then Councillor Rawson next online.
Perfect, thank you. To answer your question, it immediately struck me that there are 3 sort of areas of concern in Clearview Township when it comes to transit. The first one is the obvious, and that is that people need to get to grocery stores, they need to get to medical appointments, they need to get to things that help us sustain our life, right? So let's just call that the family group. And then the second group, I'm going to call it the recreational users of our road, because we have an awful lot of cyclists on our road, as well as many of our hiking trails actually hike down the side of our roadways as well. So we have recreational users. And I'm going to include in that some of the motorcycle community and the classic car guys, because I have to tell you, at this beautiful day like today, the roads are full of people that are just touring, which is wonderful, but they're touring. And then the last category, I think, is the one that we have to all acknowledge, and that is that roads are here to bring commerce and business to our communities. And we have a lot of business goes on our roads, carrying materials back and forth, gravel pits, lumber yards. There's a lot of business that happens on our roads. So those 3 areas are the key areas, and they're all, the problem is that they have to connect with each other, and they have to, be respectful of each other. We have the Share the Road program, for cyclists. And sadly, last summer, we had a fatality of a cyclist getting hit. So it was, and it was hit by I'll call it that family category driver. It was not a business driver. So, it was, these things do happen. And so it's the rural road network has to handle everything, including the farm equipment, which also is in the business category too. So, there has to be some type of level of cooperation in mobility. the transit bus will definitely fall, in my opinion, into the business category because it's a business doing that business. And, there's a fare being applied, although the people that are using it perhaps are doing it for other reasons. Many of them are going to work, many of them are not. You can't really tell what their purpose is, but if you look at it just, from the outside, it's a bus, it's a commercial vehicle. So that's how I think.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So those kind of three different categories of road users and the complexity of that. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Rawson virtually, and then Councillor Cabral.
Thank you. I think the question is about challenge and access to the system. From my lens, and I think about our senior population, it's the cost. As an example, in the last couple of years, our integration with Midland and Penetanguishene, we've provided free transit for seniors. One municipality and the other one is a month behind or otherwise. We get a lot of backlash with a $2 fare. Recently, we've had, between Midland and Penetanguishene, we've had multiple buses down in a day. 3-4 buses at a time, and people have been able to go from one town to the other, and they've come to our council saying, hey, when we have to take a taxi coming home, the cost is a big impact. So cost is, from my view, a large barrier and something we need to be recognizing and consider if we want users to use the system.
Thank you, Councillor Rawson. So yeah, affordability and cost associated with travel. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you. I guess for me, when we're talking about transit, you have folks who have access to transit, be it good or bad, in some of our communities. You have the links that does provide, good service to many of our settlement areas, but then you have folks who are outside of that, 1 kilometer or whatever, if it's a mobility issue to get there. Or even if they happen to live there, it's kind of like they have to drive to the settlement area or find transportation to the settlement area in order to catch the Lynx bus. I think one of the largest issues is you have folks who are on farms or in rural properties that are aging. They've become nervous drivers. They are no longer allowed to drive, even though they want to stay where they are. The issue is that they're no longer capable of navigating to and from. So we're putting those folks in a position, through no fault of the counties or anybody else's, in a situation where they literally have to move. They can no longer, not because they can't maintain their house, cut their lawn, or any of those things. They just don't have the transportation option available to them. So I guess that would be what I would think would be one of the major issues, is folks literally having to move in order to accommodate transportation needs. So when we're talking about our settlement areas and the bus passes through, let's talk about those people who have access, and then maybe look at ways we can improve some accessibility to folks who are in the rural areas who don't have it at all. It just doesn't exist. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, aging population in a rural environment and the lack of transportation options. So I'll go to Councillor Anderson next online.
Thank you. Through the chair, we don't have any transit in the township of Agitaas, just speaking for myself here. But I think the challenge for that is there's a dependency, and Councillor Cox spoke to it, on the automobile. And unless you have transit or some sort of transit initiative, you're not going to change the minds of anyone going out there and buying a vehicle. And you are forcing people to have to relocate or to seek other alternatives. It's unrealistic that we're going to be driving up and down every single road for residents. Not everyone's going to be accounted for in this, in my opinion. But I think that we have to start changing the hearts and minds of individuals that transit is a viable option. And I think that's the biggest challenge for the county, because we can certainly offer it in the urban centers, but going to the rural settlement areas, we really have to focus on individuals' desire to use transportation, public transportation.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson, about automobile reliance there and the availability of transit as a viable option. I'm going to go to Councillor Smith, then Councillor Leduc, and then Councillor McDonald, and we'll go to the next question after that. Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much. I'm kind of coming at this from a bit of a different attitude. First of all, we have a transit system in Wasaga Beach, and what I've learned and what I can tell you is that transit is complicated. It is extremely complicated. To add one stop to a route is very, very difficult to do if your system's already at a tax level, which I think anyone who has a transit system will tell you you're there. You're there from day one. And so, you know, I'd hate to spend a year and a half at this to come back and say, really what we're doing is the best we can get or the best we can do. And so I look at this and say, you know, we cannot be everything to everybody. And, you know, if you live in a rural area, for hundreds of years, there has been transit in municipalities and a bus that goes to the rural area, whether it be gray coach or PMCL, and you have a station that you can go to go into the rural area and then use the systems there. I don't see that changing even still today, much more than what we're already doing. I'd love to see it be much better than it is, but is that viable? Is it feasible? Is it financially feasible? Because the other thing we know for sure is that transit is a major loss leader. You know, the vast majority of taxpayers are footing the bill for the minority of taxpayers. And that's the way society works. That's fine. But I certainly hope, and I'd be surprised if we weren't, but I certainly hope that we're looking at this from a much broader lens, first of all, on the financial viability to grow this system. Because at the end of the day, if that benchmark isn't met, first and foremost, we're just spinning our wheels, no pun intended, with the rest of it. And so then in that case, we need to really be looking at our urban areas and how we connect them better. And the rural areas, until we get to that point or dollars and cents are there to grow to that, it's kind of a 1 or 2 station in rural areas to get you to the urban areas. I really appreciate what we're trying to do here. Don't take me wrong. But I don't want to see us go down these roads to come back where we are today to say, hey, other than fixing a few routes here and there, you know, unless we're going to spend tens of millions of dollars and raise taxes drastically, you know, if you move or you live in a rural area, it's probably not reasonable to expect you're going to have bus service come by your door every day. And that's just the cold hard realities of it. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, about financial viability of a rural system. So I'm going to go to Councillor Leduc next online.
Thank you. Couple of comments. First and foremost, the screen you showed with the transit services being provided throughout the county now, the local ones and the county, I think that tallied near $15 million in transit costs already that we're providing for services. So this transit here is going to be the hundreds of millions of dollars when it comes down to it. Don't get me wrong, I'm in support of transit. I believe we need to provide that service. My concern is right now that we had 11 respondents. That takes us to like the 10,000ths of the residents. So it's like the zeros are so piled in front of the decimal that it's just that we can't use that as a really survey yet. So I hope we get more traction on that survey to see what people really want to do. And I think we have to put some numbers and dollars there. The mobility issue, talking about this now, the mobility issue is straightforward. It is cost and convenience. I know somebody picked up on cost earlier, but it is cost and convenience. I mean, it is a rural area we live in, and if it's convenient, but it's too expensive, we're going to jump in our car and go to the grocery store. We want to make sure that we can do it with a minimal cost and at least have some convenience to make people get away from their car and actually get on the transit, because that's how we're going to support the system, is by getting the gas tax, by having the ridership. So to me, on demand is a very a good system. I think the fixed route that we're running right now with a feeder system into it, like an on-demand feeder system, that's probably the best way to start this service. And just the infrastructure alone to build the stops and everything else is going to be astronomical in cost. So tough job ahead of you, but good luck. And I do want to, transit is very important. We need to do that. And I think it really needs to target our industrial areas ASAP when it comes down to building on this transit system. It has to look at the jobs, because that's what you do, is get people to work. It keeps the costs down of the labor costs for employers if they can provide these types of transit services where people don't have to go out and buy cars and spend a ton of money on insurance, things like that. So lots to work through, but hopefully we get more people doing this survey. It's critical we get more people involved, because this is going to be a huge cost to everybody in the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Leduc. So just to clarify, the 11 people who responded was from the council survey. We've had over 300 responses to the community online survey and hope to get more. It's open until July 4th. And we'll report on that after that survey closes.
Okay, thanks. So 11 people from council and 300 from the community. So
yes,
okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Just wanted to clarify that.
No, good point. And it's Leduc. If it quacks like a duck, it's Leduc.
So I'm going to go to Councillor McDonald online, then Councillor Cox, and then we're going to move on to the next question. Councillor McDonald.
Thank you. I think going back to Councillor Cox's comments about getting the riders knowing what we have to offer, because ESSA did have a bus system, and even after the fact that it was gone, after so many years that we've done it, they said, oh, we didn't know about it. I mean, we did as much as we could, and sometimes it's very hard to have people come in and actually support the system, and that's the biggest challenge I think that we're going to have. And I think things that will come in place is a timing, like the weekend services, and knowing that not just on our rural, but also in our urban centers, there's isolation, which, you know, that isolation of seniors and small families for that matter becomes with depression and other health issues when they can't, because they either have no driver's license, not have a car, or have one car that has already gone out for somebody that's using it for work. So I think those are some of the issues that are going to have to be looked at, so that we can maybe find some way to make some kind of inroads with helping those that need this system badly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. Yeah, certainly noted that isolation and making sure that people are connected is an issue. So I'll go to Councillor Cox, and then we're going to go to our next question.
I'd just like to comment on Councillor Smith's. I totally agree with what he's saying. And anybody I know in my township who talks about it, their biggest question is, when are we getting Uber? When can we get Uber so that I can go somewhere and be able to call it and come home? So I think a lot of rural areas is much like what Innisfil did, because people, I mean, when I want to go out, I just get in my car and I go. Like, I'm not going to go walk down and wait for a bus. Sorry, but you just do that. You grow up that way. That's what you do in a rural area. So when people want to go out for an evening and have a dinner and one drink or whatever they want to do, they want to be able to have transportation home. And there's nobody who can supply that. You cannot do this. Lynx can never do it. But we need to maybe help get those other types of transportation available for the rural people to know that they can do this. They could phone Uber, and they're becoming much more like in Coldwater. There's one cab, and you know, that's it. But I think if we could provide some other service, or tell them that we could find this service or it comes in or something, that would really help the one area that you're not going to be able to service, as he says, with buses. Like, it's just not going to be possible.
Thank you. So a desire for some flexible service, including something like Uber. Okay, so we're going to go to our next survey results here. So this was the potential benefits of public transit. So which one was the most significant priority for the councillors who responded to the survey? So we'll see here the top priority was accessibility for seniors, students, and low-income residents. Then supporting economic development, and we've heard about both of those things already today, and providing an affordable transportation alternative. Also have heard about that. And then followed by reducing traffic congestion, environmental sustainability, and access to affordable housing. So those were some of the priorities from the council survey. This is how important did those who responded to the survey believe a county-wide transit system is to improve the well-being of the community. So we'll see there on the left, it was extremely important to almost 60% of the respondents, followed by somewhat important and then very important. And then about the vision. So how important is creating a seamless and connected service for all county residents? And again, we'll see extremely important come up as the top selected, followed by very important and somewhat important. So the next question here is, what is your vision for transit across the county? And we are challenging you to come up with 3 keywords that describe your vision for the future of transit in the county. Chair Dolan?
Thank you. So equitable would be one. I heard from Deputy Mayor McClellan saying that only 2/3 of New Tecumseh is covered, and there's not a Lynx bus that goes anywhere near Innisfil. So equitable, it'd be one. Cost effective. I won't say affordable because I think that's an oxymoron. I don't think there's anything affordable about any kind of transit system. But, you know, data driven to make sure that the buses are as full as can be. So from the data I get from Innisfil Transit, I know if I have a large vehicle transfer from here to here at this time, I know exactly, or within a very with much detail, how many people will be on it, because we've got years of that data. And also informed decision makers. So I think it's really important when this comes back that we have, if you're going to do this, the subsidy per rider is going to be approximately this. If you're going to this, the subsidy per rider is going to be that. We would never build a library or a road without knowing what the cost of those would be. And I think what happens, and it's happening in my municipality right now because we're doing a transit survey, people think transit is free, or they think it's paid for by what they put in the fare box, the advertising on the bus, and the government subsidies, where that's not even a drop in the bucket, as we've heard from Dylan already. So to make those informed decisions about, we need to know what the subsidy is, what the taxpayers are paying for every bum in a seat that we're planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Dolan. So equitable, cost-effective, data-driven, and informed decision-making. That's okay. We'll try to stick to 3, but I'm going to go to Chair Measures next, and then Councillor Rawson online.
Okay, I'm going to be really simple.
Okay.
1 bus pass. It's ridiculous that residents have to have 3 bus passes to get to work. It's just ridiculous. Across Simcoe County, they're all in Simcoe County, and they have different passes for different municipal services. And yet, how long has it been that our Visa cards worked worldwide? Right? So come on, let's get 1 bus pass.
Okay,
it's about providing service. Remember, you're going to build value in the service by making it convenient for people. So make it convenient.
Okay, thank you, Chair Measures. So 1 bus pass, short and simple. So Councillor Rawson.
Sustainable, connected, seamless.
Okay, great. Sustainable, connected, and seamless. So I'm going to go Councillor Miskomis next, and then Councillor Evans.
Thank you. Councillor Rawson took 2 of my words. Accessible, sustainable, and connectivity.
Okay, accessible, connected, and connectivity. Sustainable, sorry about that. Councillor Evans.
Thank you. There's a lot of pressure to come up with 3 words, so I'm going to pass on that attempt. First of all, just a high level, before I get into, I do have 3 things I want to touch on. I think it's come up, a couple things that I've noticed today. Obviously, the different requirements of rural versus urban. And I don't know how we're ever going to make everybody happy with one system. So I think we got to be, just as background, Tiny is very, very rural, very, very large area. We do have 1 stop on our border, just like ESSA, like something that's basically inaccessible to everybody. So really nobody uses the service at all. And that's okay. To Councillor Smith's earlier point, when you move to Tiny, frankly, you got to have a car. and that's just the way it is. And I'm sorry, you know, it would be nice to have transit for everybody that needs it all over Tiny, but realistically, it's economically, you know, unfeasible. That's why Uber isn't everywhere, because they're not making money at it. And not that we're going to make money at this, but we got to make it viable that that people, you know, we're not losing tons and tons of money. So keeping that rural versus urban in mind, and I think we talked about a little bit already, was the third-party groups that are providing accessible transportation, but they also provide transportation to people that don't need accessible being health-wise or related. Like we have in North Simcoe, we have Community Reach, we have Wheels for Wheels, and I'm sure throughout the town and throughout the county, there's numerous organizations like this. So first of all, getting back to your earlier question, I think we definitely need to reach out to these groups. I'll be reaching out to the groups in my area to make sure that they fill out the form. But to me, they're there because they found a need and they've been able to do it, albeit Community Reach has, I think, 3 or 4 buses, but it's still 3 or 4 buses that wouldn't otherwise be there. And they use it with volunteers, and it's economically viable. And I think that that's something as a group, we have to reach out to these people and find out there's a need and they're making it work and it's successful. So that's as a high level. My 3 areas, and I just touched on this is kind of, we touched on the integrating the links into our existing communication and transit education and information. I've heard it from a number of you, and I have no idea where links go. I know the routes, I know what it is, but like, you know, it's not part of everyday lore up here. It's not something that people even consider as something that they want to do. In terms of like we've got opportunities here in terms of working with the municipalities to provide areas. I know like in Perkinsfield and Wyville, we have no service, and those are our 2 largest settlement areas by far in Tiny. But we have areas there that we can have park and ride areas. We've got existing parking. We've got areas on the side of the road that we can develop for bus stops and things like that. So I think that you know, developing, there's infrastructure there that we can leverage to have a commonality again to make everybody starts to get that links idea into their everyday life. And then the last area I have is, and I call it mutually reinforcing services, and this just goes back to what I said before, in that, you know, I know that Councillor Smith and I talked about his system and Wasaga coming into Woodland, and how do we get all these people together that they all work together? And that's something that I don't think is touched on by rural versus urban argument. It's more like, how do we get the Community Reach to deal with the Wasaga Beach, to deal with the links, to like, how do we provide a framework and an opportunity for people to be able to exchange information so they're all on the same page? And right now that really, you know, I don't think that's happening. And no disrespect or no critique of anybody, it's just not set up. So, you know, it's, the groups know about each other, but how do we get them all on the same table and say, okay, you know what, this makes sense here, or this makes sense here, so we can pull this all together? Because when I'm talking to people in my area and on staff and people are like, well, Dave, what are you going to, because I'm fully in favor, like in terms of, you know, providing an opportunity and coordinating with the third-party groups to give people, those people that need the access, and to help them along with our expertise. Everybody goes, oh, you know, we tried that 10 years ago, we tried that 20 years ago, it doesn't work. I think things really have changed since COVID, and we really have to come up with a solution. And I think that a lot of the pieces are there. Now it's up to us as a county to be able to organize and pull them all together to come up with a solution that hopefully fits both, as I say, rural versus urban, rural and urban. So thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Councillor Irvin. So not a one size fits all, integrated with links, and we're all working together, mutually reinforcing each other. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Anderson, and then we'll go on to our next question.
Thank you. And it's certainly a fine line with transit, but accessible to residents, affordable to riders, and accountable to ratepayers.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. So accessible, affordable for users. And what was the last one there? Accountable.
Accountable to ratepayers.
Yeah. AAA. Okay. Councillor Fryer, did you have something to add there before we move on?
Thank you. I think one word that hasn't been used is reliable.
The residents are going to have to be able to rely on it, and rely on it all the time, and know that in order to get the ridership up. The other thing I was thinking about was most of the Simcoe County munis deal with an influx of tourism regularly, and the needs of those tourists are a lot different than the residents. So I think the reliable part of it has to be to the residents. We have to be thinking of the residents and not, if we can handle tourists around that scheduling in some effective way, then fine. But I think it has to be reliable to our residents.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Fryer. Yeah, we have one more online, and then we'll go to the next question. Councillor Gordon.
Thanks. I mean, a lot of the ones we've heard are already encapsulated, but the ones I'd written down were efficient, interconnected, and accessible. Whatever we do, it needs to have accessibility baked into it. I don't think we could roll something new out or expand services without incorporating accessibility. And that's not just people in wheelchairs. That could be people that have rollators and other things that just don't move as quickly as younger people getting on and off the bus. So it needs to be accessible, whether it's a bus like we're used to, or the smaller form factor vans. So efficient, interconnected, and accessible were the ones I had, but I don't disagree with anything that any of my colleagues have shared either.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Okay, so we're going to keep moving here. Our next question. Okay, Dennis is going to take this one.
Okay, just going to set the context for this question, and then I'll pass it back over to Kristen. I think we've talked about this quite a bit, that it's all about identifying priorities, and transit is a balancing act, right? And I'm going to use a fictitious number of $100. And if you had $100 to spend on a transit system, where would you spend it? And where you spend it depends on sort of what you're trying to achieve. So if you want to spend it on improving frequency, your outcome is more about getting people out of their automobiles, right? Because we're improving frequency on the most high demand corridor, and you can get people out of their vehicles. If we want coverage, then we may not be talking about frequency. We might be talking about spreading that resource across the county and to provide more access to equity. If we want sustainability, we want to get more people on vehicles to reduce single occupant vehicle travel. So we want to fill up those vehicles. Affordability and economic, like how much do we spend on our fares? We can increase the fares to improve our cost recovery, or we can keep our fares low to make it affordable. So there's choices that we need to make, and there's a balancing act. And so I sort of set this context to identify that we're here to sort of identify what those priorities are, and how do we set that balance. So I'll turn it back over to Kristen.
Thank you, Dennis. Okay, so we want to hear from you now about how you would allocate that $100. Where would your priorities be?
Sorry.
Do you want to be skipping that one?
No, sorry. Bit of a miss.
Wait, we're staying at this question, right? Okay.
No.
Keep going.
Let me.
Okay.
So my apologies. So this is some of those priorities that we had identified, right? So there's affordability of the system, availability, close proximity, a system that's connected, easy to pay, easy to use, equitable and accessible, fast and direct, et cetera. So we identified where you can spend that $100 in terms of your overall priorities. And this is how the responses that we received from the councillor survey. We received priorities, and a lot of what we heard today, that a connected system, easy to pay, easy to use, are all service attributes that are important to us. So moving on sort of to that next question, what are the key attributes of a transit system, and how would you prioritize these, and why? So we saw what we saw from the council survey, sort of set up that context in terms of that balancing act. But thinking about all these service attributes, what are your priorities in terms of designing the system to meet your vision? Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, so now we're looking, I guess, for your three top attributes of a system from these options that you see here on the screen. And I'll leave this up for a bit so you can take a look at them. But if you were to pick your top 3 of these, so we have affordable here, and that's affordable for passengers to take transit. Availability, and that's in terms of the hours and days of service. Close proximity, so how far are you away from transit? Connected, transferring, how easy is it to connect between systems? Easy to pay. I think we already heard about that one from Councillor or Chair Measures. Easy to use, to plan and monitor your trips. Where's your bus? Fast and direct. How fast and direct is it to the location I'm going to? Frequency, so minimizing that wait time. Equitable and accessible for all. Minimizing environmental impact and that GHG emissions. Regional connectivity to GO Transit. Reliable, how on time is that service? Safe, going to the bus stop and being on the bus. And any additional priorities that you don't see here on this list. So I'll open it up, see if there's any comments here. Okay, Chair Dolan.
Thank you so much. I gave you 4 last time, so I'm only going to give you 2 this time to even it out. So I think regional connectivity is important. Well, it's less than what it used to be. We still have a majority of our workers leaving our municipality of Simcoe County to go elsewhere to work. So I think getting people to and from conveniently to that is important. And under additional priorities, I would put sustainability. And I don't just mean the environment, but that it definitely includes the environment. Having diesel buses travel up and down Highway 11 with 1 person in them is not environmentally sustainable, and financially sustainable as well, that we can afford to charge the taxpayers what it costs to run the service that they want.
Okay, thank you, Chair Dolan. So regional connectivity to get to work elsewhere, sustainable beyond the environment, and financially sustainable as well. Councillor Smith?
Thank you. I'm only going to give you 1, and that gives Lynn 2 more for the next question if she needs them. And it's financial sustainability. I mean, all of these are great. And if we look up here, I could choose every one of them are very important to having a transit system. But at the end of the day, if it isn't financially sustainable, nothing else matters. So first and foremost, we should be looking at the financial stability, the financial sustainability, I should say, of this system, how wide it's going to, how wide an area we are going to look to really make this work to the best we can. Or again, I don't think anything else matters at this point.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. So emphasizing that financial sustainability piece. So I know we have Councillor McDonald online.
Thank you. I believe that the financial to provide the system for long-term is important, as Councillor Smith said. I think equitable to accessibility, because those are the ones that need transit, and close to proximity, because as in most cases that were presented today, they have to take another system to get to that system. So those are my 3. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. So I'll go on the floor here. Councillor?
Thank you. I'll just add one, which is practical or useful for employers. And I raised this as while we've been sitting here, I did your transit survey, and I'm hoping before the end, you can address if you're going to be reaching out to businesses as well, because this is a very resident-driven survey. And for me, I'd love to know things like, from an employer, where are his or her employees coming from? Do they need transit? What hours? Where do they see their customers coming from? So I can see from nods that maybe that's a later survey, if you could address that at some point. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So we are having stakeholder meetings, and that includes reaching out to major employers. Is there a follow-up?
Well, I know in our community, there's got to be 500 businesses. Like, they're not major employers, I'm sure, under any definition you have. But, how are we going to reach those people?
Yep, Nathan, go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to add to, while we are having those stakeholder meetings with the business community and the economic side of things, we also, in parallel to this, we're doing our second year of the employment survey. So we have a team of students, as you probably have heard, going around the county, asking every business that we're aware of a variety of questions about not only their business and their employees and the work that they do, but some of their hurdles to labor force, recruitment and retention, and transportation being one of the selections that they can pick. So we're looking forward to seeing the results of that and integrating any beneficial information from that into this project as well.
Okay, I think I'll go to Councillor Van Staveren online, and then we have a couple questions on the floor here.
Thank you. I look at these questions strictly through the eyes of the users, not from from a financial point of view. If we're going to encourage people to use this, and that's what we're trying to do, we make it available, we make it easy to use, and make it connected. If we can't be reliable, if we can't make it easy to pay, we're not doing our jobs anyways. So what do we do to attract more people? We have to make it friendly. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll go to, I know we've played musical chairs here.
Yes, Peter Lavoie. And I agree with Councillor Van Staveren's perspective, which was also my thought, that in order to drive use and reputation, that it should be affordable. And I'm putting together, and cheating, connected and connectivity. So both within the county and the ability to get out of the county if it's necessary on the GO system, and the frequency. And I think those things would improve the use largely for, the employment sector, which I think is where we need to rely. But anyway, that's what I have on the three.
Thank you. So affordable, connected, especially to the GO system and for our employers. Councillor Cox?
Yeah, I have to agree with Councillor Smith, but I guess what I'm trying to, when I look at this, if I lived in Midland or I lived in Collingwood or was not, I mean, I could probably pick them, but where I live, what is the goal here? Who are we serving and why? And you can't serve everyone everywhere. And where are we going with this? I don't know. I'm having a bit of a trouble with it. Talking about marketing is probably a great, big, huge one, but we're going down roads and going places that it's nice, but are we really catching who we want? Are we really helping the people who need the help? Are we really getting the people who really want to use this? And these are all lovely, but when the bottom line comes down to it, how much can we afford? And who can we afford to serve and ensure that it's going to be done right and done once? I hear Penetang and Midland Penetang-Gusheen, talking about connectivity. I hear Wasaga Beach the same thing, and Clearview, and we have nothing where I live. And as Anderson doesn't either, and Morro Madani and Ramera. They'll never see a bus. But it's the bottom line is, sorry about that, but hey, they haven't got a number for you yet. But I just find that we're doing this where I think we should be doing this and becoming more, I don't know, sustainable, but economical, and in making sure we really are doing what we want to do.
Thank you for your comments. Streamlining, okay. Thank you for your comments, Councillor Cox, and emphasizing that sustainability and affordable financial sustainability piece. Any other comments on this one, top 3 attributes before we move on? We've got actually a big question next, so looking at the time, we should probably get to that. So just a few more survey results here. So we can see here, so given the role of the county in providing intermunicipal service, do you believe that local transit should be a responsibility of the county or each local municipality? So 73% of the survey respondents saying the county. So this is when considering providing a new connection, new links connection, or improved service to a municipality, which of the following factors should be assessed in the decision-making process? So we'll see here, there's a couple here that are bolded that received more responses. So cost in line with other service, cost of service in line with other routes, stops in medium to high density communities or key destinations to maximize ridership potential. And then followed by some other items here about achieving a minimum ridership target or a community that has local service that can connect to the Simcoe Links service. So here are the last two questions for discussion, and we really have under 10 minutes here. But what do you see as the county's role in connecting our communities with transit? And does the county have a role in local transit, or should it be an integrated system? Just a couple questions to ponder here. Yes, Chair Dolan.
Thank you. I think that both the county and the local municipality have a responsibility here. I think that some communities will want more and some will want less. So to spread the cost amongst the whole county, I think wouldn't be equitable. I think that you can integrate the systems, but I think we are so different on the local level that I would be afraid of having to give up something that's working well in a community to have something that maybe is not working, won't work as well, in order to all be the same.
Thank you, Chair. So shared between the local and the county and making sure it's integrated still. Okay, I'll go to Councillor Leduc and then Councillor Rawson and then Councillor Smith. Leduc. Apologies, Leduc.
That's okay. I'm getting used to it. I've been called that all my life. No big deal. No, I would say the county does have a role in transit. Don't get me wrong. I think the interprovincial, the intermunicipal travel is definitely a role for the county there for sure. And moving people around that's what we're going to do. Integrating it and being responsible for local transit. I think Mayor Dolan hit it that it's going to be different amongst most communities. So I think it's something I would be afraid to take our transit system and reduce the service that we're providing now. It would really upset our community. So it's something I'd have to really look at and figure out how we can work this together, whether it becomes a one county system or we work with the two systems. But I'd love to see a one county system, don't get me wrong, if that works, but it's going to be difficult to provide an equitable service across the county when it comes to some of us already providing those transit services now within our service. And we are quite different compared to most other municipalities. You know, we're quite an urban area that's quite condensed. So that's a very tough one for us. So thanks.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I'll go to Councillor Rawson next.
Thank you. I think Councillor Measures said it well earlier when he said one bus cart. I think if we use the consumer's perspective, how do we make it easy so we can figure out what we need to figure out to make it work? From the Town of Penetanguishene's perspective, we have a partnership with Midland. They're our operator. My view is I'd be happy to, just like we're doing with our economic development in the county provides the level of service to all 60 municipalities, but we've now done an MOU with the county and they're going to provide more service, which we're paying for. I'd be just happy to pay the county for transit service as opposed to the Town of Midland for our service if we want to up-level what that service level is. So I think an integrated service that we as municipalities want to buy into a different level, I think that'd be a great way. But then there's one system that we can look at efficiencies and effectiveness.
Thank you, Councillor Rawson. I'll go to Councillor Smith next.
I'll quickly just start with going back one question, if I may. You know, by far and away, I will tell you your largest employer in Simcoe County is small employers. small business is by far and away the largest employer in this country. And so I would not discredit in any way, shape, or form reaching out to small businesses, because I can tell you in my business, I pay for cabs, I pay for buses, I pay for everything to get my people to and from work. If I could do that at a one-stop shop with a county bus or a transit system, I'd be more than happy to contribute to that. Not just say I want it because I need it, but I'd be happy to contribute to that, because as we do it now is very costly. With respect to this question, I believe that efficiency is important. I don't think that we can provide transit in any of our communities cheaper than the county could do it as a countywide system as a whole. How we look at doing that, whether it's buying into certain systems or levels or whatever, that's one thing. But I think it's very important to have a countywide system where that countywide system works. And I would end with this. The City of Toronto has a great transit system. It's not the same and not the same availability and equitable to all people who live in the City of Toronto. If you live on the outskirts, it's less accessible than it is if you're in the heart of the city. So this wouldn't be any different than the City of Toronto, only a much larger geographical area in the county of Simcoe. I think the county could do this as good or better than we do it. I think it'll take some homework and they need to understand. And part of that would be, we want to, if we do this countywide, we want to make sure we at least maintain the services that we have. But I think that can be easily maintained because we're already doing it. We're not recreating the wheel there. So I'm a big believer that countywide is the best way to go.
Great, thank you for an efficient countywide system. I'm going to go to Councillor Fryer, then Peter Lavoie, Councillor Gordon, Councillor McDonald, and then we only have 4 minutes left, so we can keep our comments very concise.
Yeah. I think initially I'm of the same mind as Councillor Dolan. I wouldn't want to give up something that was working within our municipality, Collingwood, to go to a county system that is just being born. So I think initially the county has a role to work with the services that are being provided now amongst the more urban situations. And perhaps we can build out from there on the connectivity. I do believe eventually it needs to be county-wide, but not initially. I think it has to grow into that. Otherwise, I'd be concerned about, as I say, giving up control over what we think's working in our own municipality, and then that would work on the connectivity to the region that is a high priority for everybody.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Councillor Lavoie.
Yes, thank you very much. And I do agree with the sentiment of measures Rawson and Smith. And I think, essentially we should drive towards a county-wide system, and that whatever the design is what's really going to speak to the solution that would provide the assurances to the parties that are reluctant to go there. Having said that, Oromodonte has no bus system to give up or anything. We're kind of like Ramera and my colleagues from Severn over there. Yes, sort of the back of beyond. But in order to enhance that and get to the back of the beyond someday, augmenting that with zone pricing and things like that, and then contemplating has been suggested sustainable pricing models so that we're not paying for something that we're not getting, that the county can move in that direction. And I think it's the only way to grow, quite frankly. Otherwise, we'll be stuck with fragmentation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, we have 1 minute left. I'm going to go to Councillor Gordon next, and then Councillor McDonald.
Thanks, I'll be quick. Just hot off the presses, June 7th, Grey, Bruce, and Dufferin were just awarded a staggering sum of money through that OTIF funding by regionalizing their transit. Anybody who wants to Google that can. I'm looking at it, the Owen Sound Times. The province has given them just under $10 million to Grey, Bruce, and Dufferin from the Ontario Transit Investment Fund. And that is simply because they came together to regionalize transit. So if we're not looking at that yet, or we haven't read the press release, please do, because it really makes the case to regionalize transit, and there is real money, material money available from the province for counties that are making that effort right now. So I just don't want to miss that opportunity, because to everyone's point, if we can run a transit service and have it 50% funded, because it pays up to 50% of the project cost for up to 5 years for projects that encourage integrated, coordinated, and sustainable transit services. And I quote. So that's exactly what we're talking about today. And it's happening right now at the province.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I'll go to Councillor McDonald. I'll just note it is 3 o'clock right now. We'll probably just go 1 or 2 more minutes and then wrap up.
Okay, I'll be very quick. I'm very comfortable in looking at what a county-wide would do, and I feel very comfortable having our staff bring something back. They do, that's what they do best, is they bring all the scenarios to see what the hybrid would be for municipalities that have it, transit, don't have a transit, what it would look to be an integrated one. So I would be look forward to seeing that report on our desks. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll just, okay, one last, very, very succinct, please. Go ahead, Councillor.
I'm just wondering at some point, like it's hard to, like I have no idea if we have a, I'll call it successful county transit service right now. I know from Collingwood, I would say the routes aren't very practical for anyone who wants to go to where I'm told people want to go. And I won't get into all the details of that. But, you know, like, are we resurrecting a service? Are we trying to resuscitate a service that isn't working? Is it a strong service right now and we're adding to it? These are things that I hope you can enlighten us on as we go on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that back. Okay, we'll pull up the presentation just for some closing slides and next steps. Just wanted to remind everyone of the public consultation that is going on and will start tomorrow. So if you could attend, share the word with your residents and join us at one of the next upcoming open houses. And also our survey, again, it's we have over 300 responses so far, but would love to see more. And that is open until the July 4th. And then we are having some ongoing stakeholder interviews and workshops with local leaders and transit operators. So I just wanted to draw your attention to that as well. Dennis, I'll let you speak to this slide and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is just a repeat of the slide that we showed before in terms of what our next steps are. So again, right now we're in phase 1A, and this is looking at the overall transit service delivery. So based on our understanding of what your vision is for transit in the county, what the community's vision is, what the employer's vision is, we're going to sort of understand what that means and how do we create a transit service that replicates or that aligns that long-term vision and the sort of recognizing that 2051 horizon. So from there, again, reporting back to council in November about sort of what the service delivery model is, we will then assess or we'll ask council if we want to further assess the need to look at governance. And again, is the existing governance structure the most ideal way to deliver on that vision, or do we need to look at alternative governance models? So that will be a decision made by county council about whether there's a need to look into that second phase and see if we want to look more closely at what the governance looks like in November. So with that, I guess we both want to thank you for your time here today. And if we look further to engaging further and hope to see you at one of the public open houses. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dennis and Crystal. It was a great presentation, great workshop, and I appreciate you keeping it moving along quickly as well, because I tried to fit this after a council meeting. We either had a ribbon cutting, garbage, or governance, and it just wasn't working. So thank the councillors who took the time out today to come into this workshop. Very important. So I just have the confirmatory bylaw, moved by the Deputy Warden, second by Councillor Measures, that bill number 7135-25 be enacted as bylaw of the County of Simcoe. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And finally, that the June 17th, 2025 special meeting of County Council Transit Planning Workshop be adjourned at 3:04 p.m. Moved by Councillor McDonald, second by Councillor Anderson. All in favor? That is carried. Again, thank you everybody for coming in.